Chapter 24. Warm welcome? Carlos startled at the sound of the voice and quickly hid behind Mal. He figured it was the safest spot. He wasn't afraid to face danger, but he preferred to do it knowing Mal was in front of him. Evie gasped but managed not to scream. Jade cracked his knuckles, preparing to throw fists. Mal was calm, and her voice was even and steady when she poked Carlos and told him what to do. Torch, please. Pardon? He asked, before realizing she meant the torch fire zap on his phone. He turned it on, shining a blazing light into the darkness. The four of them were illuminated by the sudden brilliance, and Carlos saw that they were surrounded on all sides by a small but excitable group of young villains. He recognized some of the faces. His cousin Diego DeVille, who raised an eyebrow in greeting. Harry and Jace were with eager grins on their faces. Isla, Haiti, Claudine Frollo, Mad Maddie, who was holding some kind of flaming weapon in her hands. Hold on. What was that noise? What were they doing? He couldn't be sure at first, but it looked as if the crowd was clapping, cheering even, hooting and stomping feet and calling out their names. They're here! They're here! It's really Mal! Jay's here too! Yay, Carlos! Evie looks fantastic! And hang on. That weapon that Maddie was holding. Was that cake? With way too many candles? It was definitely a cake, and one that said, "Welcome back, heroes." "I think they mean us," said Jay, breaking into a grin. "Definitely us," said Evie, sounding incredibly relieved. I think we had the wrong idea about this club somehow," said Mal, nudging Carlos. "Or maybe we're at the wrong meeting. They sure don't seem very anti-hero to me." But Carlos didn't notice the ribbing. He was too stunned to see a very familiar and very welcome face in the group. "Professor," he called, when he spotted none other than his former Magic of Science teacher, Yen Sid. He was standing right behind Maddie, the stars on his peak sorcerer's hat reflecting the candle flames. Yen Sid was one of Dragon Hall's most respected teachers, even if it was rumored he wasn't any kind of villain at all. But he had voluntarily relocated to the Isle of the Lost in order to help educate the villain's children. "My boy," said Yen Sid with a grave nod. "Welcome." He turned to the gathered group. Give them space, don't crowd them around so much," he said gruffly. "And I suggest you four deal with those candles before they set fire to the whole building. We wouldn't want Evil Queen returning home to a pile of ashes now, would we?" The four of them blew out the cake to another round of cheers. Someone turned on the lights, and Carlos realized they were in a perfectly normal-looking basement room, clean and bright. There was a chalkboard on one wall and rows of neatly arranged tables. "Shall we begin with the cake? I had to bribe some hard-bargaining mice to sneak it out of the Oridon kitchens to the goblins earlier this week just for this," said Yen Sid. "Isla, bring over the plates, please. Maddie, will you do the honors?" "Of course, Professor," said the young witch, and set about cutting slices. The four of them watched in stunned silence as the group obediently and graciously moved aside and sat patiently, waiting for their slices. Carlos caught Jay's eye and shrugged. Yen Sid motioned for them to take the nearest table. "At least they're not here to attack us," said Jay, who accepted his slice with a wink. "Unless they want to kill us with sugar," said Mal, looking forlornly at her piece. "I sure wish I hadn't eaten that whole stale pudding now." The Anti-Heroes Club members, who never had anything remotely this good, were gobbling up the cake as fast as Maddie could slice it. It was their first taste of real sugar, and a few of them were dizzy and ecstatic from the sweetness. Harry and Jace walked up with the triumphant smiles on their faces. "Told you we wouldn't spoil it, and we didn't we?" said Jace. "You had no idea, right?" asked Harry eagerly as he licked some frosting from his upper lip. "No idea," said Carlos, suddenly feeling much fonder of them than before. They were slow and bumbly, but often eager to please. When he had been forced to throw that party for Mal, they had helped him decorate without complaint. Jace and Harry grinned and shuffled back to their seats satisfied. Professor, can we ask what this meeting is about? Said Evie as she picked daintily at her slice of cake. In time, replied the professor, licking frosting off his mustache. We have much to discuss, and it is better to do so on a full stomach. He set his plate down on their table. So tell me, how were you able to return to the island? I drove, said Carlos, his mouth full of cake. We stole the royal limousine, said Jay. It has the clicker that unlocks the dome and makes the bridge appear. Clever, said Yen Sid. I'm sure your talents at thievery were helpful in that area. Jay beamed. I guess so. Although we ran into Prince Ben, and he let us take the car anyway, reminded Mal, rolling her eyes at Jay for taking all the credit. Yes, Ben was always a progressive thinker, agreed Yen Sid. And you are all well, I take it? Enjoying life on Oridon? Yes, sir, said Evie. Very much so. The professor stroked his long gray beard. Excellent, excellent. Do give Fairy Godmother my regards when you see her next. Evie promised to do so. By the way, Professor, does my mother know you're here in our basement? Is she part of this? Yen Sid chuckled. Everything will be explained in time. Mal was fidgety and looked impatient, and Carlos knew she was eager to put an end to this chit-chat. But Yen Sid seemed determined to keep the conversation light. How are the Knights doing this season? He asked the boys. So far, we're 5-1, said Jay. We've won all our games except the loss to a strong team from the Imperial Academy. Li Shang doesn't mess around. In my day, the Olympus team was the force to be reckoned with. Always difficult to beat the gods, Yen Sid said, looking nostalgic at the memory. They still have a strong lineup, but a lot of the god kids enroll at Oridon Prep now, so maybe that's why, said Jay. Carlos finished his cake and was bursting with curiosity. He couldn't keep it inside anymore. So, Professor, come on, tell us, what is this whole anti-heroes thing all about? I can certainly explain, Yen Sid exclaimed jovially. After all, I founded it.